Thank you. My name is Lamin Jai. The European Union has been forging fresh relations with the Gambia since the overturning of the dictatorship some 3 years ago. EU-Gambia cooperation over the past 3 years, the European Union has managed to become the country's biggest development partner there. The EU ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Attila Lahos, is my big guest today. We will talk about EU-Gambia cooperation and other issues really that are quite significant and important to the EU's relationship with the Gambia there. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming to our studios. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. Always a pleasure.
So your union over the past 3 years has been trying to forge fresh relationships with the Gambia. This started way back in 2017 when one of your top officials, Mr. Mimika, that's Navin Mimika, visited the Gambia. That was what really launched the fresh relationship there. Talk to us, take us through this relationship, this newfound relationship within the Gambia and your union.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the union I am representing has been a staunch supporter of the new Gambia since the beginning. As you mentioned, rightly mentioned, Commissioner Mimica, who was then responsible for international cooperation and relations, he was the first Westerner to come to the new Gambia in February 2017. And then we discussed a long range of issues with state and non-state actors at that time, and the European Union decided to support significantly this democratization process. And this is because we believe that the elections were fair and free, and the Gambia has decided. So we decided to allocate sufficient assistance to the new government. And this is because for any country in the world coming out of an autocratic kind of regime, a dictatorship as you phrased, the challenges are tremendous. It was extremely important to make sure that the new Gambia, the new democratization process will not collapse because of the heritage of the former regime. And that's why at the time of 2017, the European Union promised significant assistance in the forms of technical assistance, in the form of project assistance, but also in the form of budgetary assistance. Every year we disburse certain amount of money. We are talking about somewhere between 20, 25, 30 million euro as annual disbursement, budgetary support for the government. And what we promised, we were very proud to be able to keep. Let me just also recall a significant year, 2018, when the European Union organized and hosted, in collaboration with the Gambian government, a so-called international conference for the Gambia. Others are referring to it as a donor conference, where additional financial support beyond political support was also triggered. And in that conference, the European Union also topped up its support. So in a nutshell, we can say that between the period 2017 and 2021, the European Union has pledged a total of 365 million euro worth of complex support, roughly 1/3 of which is actually budgetary support. Now, this was the situation up until now. We intensified the partnership in all aspects of it. We managed to intensify political cooperation. Just to name a few results out of that, for example, the Gambia is joining the European external economic agreement with the West African countries. Gambia was the 15th country out of the ECOWAS region to join this. It provides for a lot of opportunities in the future. We also concluded a European sustainable fisheries cooperation agreement with the Gambia last year. And indeed, practical cooperation on different files when it comes to representing the same or similar values in the international theater, in the UN and elsewhere. These were also opportunities for enhancing this political partnership, making it a meaningful political cooperation. Now, Beside the development assistance, also we try to enhance the trade relations between the country and the region. But I'm also here to say that some of these processes are not something you can fix from one day to the other. It's a process, it takes time. For us, from a European Union perspective, it's amazing how much the Gambia has achieved over the past 3 years in a peaceful, democratic manner. I do hear people, I do understand that the average Gambian may not feel this when he goes for shopping to the market. But on the other hand, I do believe the democratic transition, which is not for a couple of years' time, it's a much longer process. If one looks at the achievements of the transitional justice in general, but like the Truth and Reconciliation or the constitutional review in particular, these are amazingly positive stories. So from a European Union perspective, as long as the Gambia remains on this democratic transition, the European Union wants to be a partner and wants to support these efforts because these are tremendous efforts. On the other hand, we do believe achieving good governance, rule of law, human rights, this is something we really are here to support, and we very much look forward to continuing this collaboration. Of course, now we talk about collaboration at a time when we all are impacted by this pandemic, which of course puts us into a totally different situation.
Mr. Ambassador, the EU side of the bargain has largely been centered on providing financial assistance to the Gambia. This, I mean, we started way back in 2017 when you first agreed to give Gambia over 70 million euros there, and that this continued. Now the amount of money that your union has given to Gambia runs into billions of dollars, or at least 300 million euros, if I believe. But on the part of the government of the Gambia, or the Gambia, if you like, what has been the expectation? What was the Gambia expected to do, the thing specifically, so that EU would also keep to its own side of the bargain by giving Gambia money?
Indeed. The Gambia, when decided to change the government in 2016, the Gambia elected this government to the platform of change to roll out several necessary reform processes. We mentioned partly the TRC or the constitutional review, legal reform process, security sector reform process. These are the processes where we agreed with the government that they will embark on these changes. And this is not what we dictated. This is what the people demanded from this coalition who won the election and eventually from the government. Now, in these processes, whatever support we deliver, and let me just emphasize that the 365 million, which was the total amount of EU development assistance rendered to the Gambia, is not entirely in cash. 1/3 of it, roughly 130 million, over the period of 4 years between 2017 and 21, and that's the component which was foreseen to be in the form of budgetary support, which is indeed cash from the Treasury to the Treasury. The rest of the intervention is in the form of technical assistance and different project interventions, all supporting, aiming to support the national development plan of the country. Now, this government, from our perspective, this government had a program. And this government included in their program different reform actions and reform avenues where we believe that's the right way to go towards democracy. Therefore, for us, it's not a question whether we really wish to support or not. We feel obliged to support such a democratization process. Now, for every development assistance program, project, or budgetary support, there is a contractual basis. So we agree on certain activities, we agree on certain benchmarks, and if those are met, then support is delivered. Just to give you one example, back in 2017, when the country was almost financially collapsing, it was extremely important that the budgetary support the EU dispersed, 30 million, comes the soonest. If I recall, it came somewhere in summer 2017. Now, precondition was, for example, the release of political prisoners. because I believe this is something the new government could easily do. This is something serving reconciliation, but also serving the delivery of justice. And every year when we had disbursement, because we did have budgetary disbursement every single year up until now, and even this year, there was always a set of benchmarks jointly established with the government to make sure that they are supporting the democratization process, but they are also defined in a way that they are achievable. The European Union doesn't have an interest in saving the money we promised. We have an interest of executing the budget and delivering on our promises. When it comes to project support, this is a bit more complicated issue in the sense that a budgetary support is a disbursement. It's a financial transaction between a few banks, whereas you have a project which has got an implementation period. So it was also important to establish the relations on technical level in a way that all these project interventions, when they are scrutinized, when they are audited, when they are instructed, directed how to roll out, in this overseeing mechanism we have representatives of different beneficiary partners, whether it's state actors or local communities or other beneficiaries. I think this is the only way we can deliver a project which not only achieves objectives, but also ensures that the receiving side buys in, which means they also identify themselves with the project goals, and thus we can make sure that the project result achieves will be sustainable.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, then let's talk about the donor conference that the EU, because since you are talking about the democratization process, this government really took over at a time when this country was really flailing economic-wise, and then this donor conference that was in 2018 that was organized with the help, of course, with your union in Brussels, 1.4 billion US dollars.
1.4 billion euro.
Euros, sorry. What happened to that? Because people are saying that that conference actually failed because the amount of money that have come into the country has not been much at all.
Please allow me to disagree. I don't think that conference failed. What was the purpose, the objective of the conference? To trigger further support for the Gambia. Now, this 1.4 billion euros, which was a total of the pledges from all over the world, also including the additional pledges European Union or some of the member states made at the conference. We kept record of all these pledges and we handed over the set of pledges to the government because they are the ones supposed to look after and follow up with the single individual countries or states or organizations who made a pledge to see how they are channeled into the country. One thing is sure, out of this 1.4 billion euro, roughly 60% of these pledges were loans. Relatively only, 40% of the pledges were grants. The difference is that with the loans, you have to pay some additional cost with it, whereas the grants are free money, if you wish. Now, all the European Union support and pledge were in the form of grants. When it comes to Gambia following up on these conference-triggered pledges, the Gambia had certainly a difficulty because they were not in a position to take up additional loans. Therefore, they had to concentrate on the grants. As for the state of play in terms of channeling into the country different grants, I don't have statistic data. I only have data for what the European Union pledged because the others are belonging to the other countries, so you will need to ask the Finance Ministry for that. What I know, and as far as I know, European Union as a whole, as well as some of those EU member states who made a pledge, they are in the process of being delivered. Some interventions already started, some are still ongoing, but it is kept as a promise. And that's what I am really happy for, because the European Union has always been keen on making sure that we are a reliable and predictable partner.
Reliable and credible partner, but then now the issue also has to do with the EU in as much as the union there wants to support the Gambia in its development efforts. But the EU also trying to impose certain conditions really on the Gambia, conditions that Gambians don't really want, because a government serves at the pleasure of a citizenry, of the people. For example, one of the things that is really wild out there, raging out there, has to do with the issue of Gambian migrants in your countries, who live in your countries all the time since 2017 to date. Whatever EU gives to the Gambia, the first thing that the people would say is that the EU don't want Gambian migrants in their countries, so they are giving this money to the country on the basis of having them take back their citizens. Is this really the case? Is that what the EU is trying to achieve here?
No, it's not the case. If you look at the history of this partnership, when it started in 2017, the new Gambia-EU partnership, we did not even talk about migration, in the sense that there was not a single diplomatic activity, neither by me nor my EU fellows from Brussels, which would have been about return of deportation of Gambians per se. What we did at the beginning, if you collect figures which were widely in the media, when the European Union learned about the human crisis of those many, not only Gambians, who were migrating, escaping from war zones wherever, migrating to Europe, and went through tremendous human rights violations throughout the way, not to mention many of those who died, the European Union put emphasis on saving those lives. So we had first a project with the International Organization for Migration, a UN agency, whereby we supported, financially funded IOM activities to save the migrants, whether they were in Libya or Niger or elsewhere, and bring them home, not only Gambians. As a matter of fact, by now, over the past 3.5 years, it's almost 5,000, the number of Gambians who voluntarily returned to the Gambia with the help of IOM, funded by the European Union. I do believe we all did the right thing by saving lives. Now, if you compare this figure of 5,000 with the figure of few hundreds who were so far deported back to Gambia from different European countries, member states, the two are just not comparable. It's less than 10% of the amount of 5,000 which were so-called deportees. And let me underline there, this is not about European Union countries not wanting migrants. European Union is a welcoming community of countries. Many countries have got significant amount of immigrants in their own land. What we are aiming for is to have a manageable legal migration. Now, there's a difference between, of course, those escaping from war zones in Syria and elsewhere, or escaping from natural disasters, than compared to those who are not escaping from this, but rather applying for a better possibility to work and live.
What is the difference?
The difference is that one is forced, while the other made a choice. Now, when it comes to making a choice...
Don't you think in countries such as the Gambia,
yeah,
poverty can also be in that same group as war and other societal ills? Because poverty is what is pushing a lot of these people that are hopeless, people that don't have anything to do. And these are people really that need to survive. That's a human rights crisis. You don't agree?
It's very interesting, because those who managed to take this this perilous journey, they also spent a very significant amount of money for sponsoring that. Their families, their communities, which shows that it is not really the poverty, we are talking about poverty when it comes to those escaping from war, losing everything.
But do you realize that some of these people borrow this money that you're talking about, this amount of money that you're talking about? So in essence, these are people that can't have that here, that can't have when they live here.
Well,
but as soon as they tell their people that I want to go to Europe through the back way.
This is not the way we operate. We truly believe in rule of law, which practically means when you enter a country, you have to legalize your status. And that's what we believe in. you could see many Gambians are still there who didn't manage to legalize their status, but as long as the procedure for them to legalize their status is ongoing, none of them was deported. Those few hundreds who were brought back the past 2 years basically, those were the ones who already exhausted all the legal avenues to secure their legal status in the country. No country in the world welcomes unmanageable amount of migrants. And that's true. That's a matter of principle. And this is what we believe in. If you look at the composition of some of these migration statistics, it also shows that we are not talking about unskilled, uneducated people, which practically means they have skills with which they could have obtained a job, start a business, whatever the case is. We do believe the solution for managing the migration flows is not the massive illegal migration, so to say, not least because it is exploited by many illegal activities along the way.
But clearly your countries don't want at all to entertain these people, to kind of have them legalize their stay in their countries. Most of these people, 90% of them, if they come to your country and look for documents to try to properly document themselves, it's just not possible. It's impossible.
Actually, that is the biggest problem, because perhaps 90+% of them, when they arrive to the European Union member states, they don't have any documentation because they either destroy or lose or got confiscated of their documents. And that makes the process even more difficult. I mean, I think we all agree that if I want to enter your country, I should have some legal documentation where I can prove who I am. Now, if you look at the number of Gambians working legally, officially working in different European member states or elsewhere overseas, sending home remittances, that's also a significant figure. So one may really ask the question, how come that certain amount of good Gambians could make sure that their papers, that their legal status is as per the rules of the host country, whilst others simply deny that? This doesn't work that way. I would disagree that member states do not wish to have migrants and foreign workers. Even nowadays in this COVID pandemic, you might have heard some news where certain member states increased the number of work permits specifically given to migrant.
But Mr. Ambassador, with all
Yes.
due respect, that is enforced. That is not your wish. This crisis was never something that your country saw coming. And using these people to work has to do with the fact that most of the people that are working in your different countries had to be repatriated, evacuated back to their home countries. Now there is a shortage of labor, shortage of workers in your different countries. That is why now you are falling on trying to activate or allow these people to work. Otherwise, that wouldn't have been the case.
These work permits, which I was talking about, it was not forced by the COVID. It was forced by the economic need in the given member state, whereby they have lack of labor. And that's the point. As long as, for the lack of labor, European population is aging. Of course, people in their pensions won't go for the fields to collect fruits. But these are exactly the legal ways of migration which we are interested in to negotiate. Because if Europe, or if member states, if any country in the world needs labor, then there is a manageable way to arrange for that. That's not a solution that people just try to enter the country illegally and then try to find something in the grey or black economy. European Union is built on the foundation of legality, rule of law, and this is what we believe in. I do believe this current COVID circumstances obviously help in a way to enhance these negotiations with many countries, not only the Gambia.
So now, clearly, your countries, if you talk to Gambian immigrants migrants in your different countries, what they will tell you is that your countries, in fact, have the capacity to absorb them, to find a way of allowing them to stay in your countries legally, documented, and working, and not just working and helping themselves and their families back home, but also helping in growing your economies by paying tax And
exactly.
by paying tax and improving themselves by way of going to
without
school, for
a legal
example, developing
status,
themselves. Yes.
without a legal status, you can't undertake a formal official job through which taxes are paid to the national system of the given country. Many of the migrants are involved in semi-legal or illegal activities, and that's also something we want to avoid. Our aim is to make sure that migration is channeled in a legally okay manner. Therefore, a kind of input of large number of immigrants will not pose a strain on the national social welfare system of the given country. And at the end of the day, it is in the interest of both sides. If a country needs labor force, here come possible legal migration. But as long as it is kept in a manageable manner, that's what we are agitating for, and we are calling for. And it's obviously something where different countries react in a different way. I do believe we also have to agree what also a common stand among the UN member states, that it's every country's responsibility to receive back its citizens if they are not legally settled in a foreign country. And I think this is where we will have to find a balance. If you look at the numbers, no surprise that less than 10% of this voluntary return, 5,000, yes, has been brought back. And this is also because the European Union didn't intend to break the very fragile social balance in the Gambia. Does the Gambia have all the job opportunities for millions of Gambians returning home? No. And that is one of the reasons why there was no mass deportation. Some media reported about it. It's factually not true. The number of hundreds, quite a number of them were actually coming out of prison. Of course, no country in the world wishes to keep criminals on its territory. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, please, with all due respect, I'm not saying Gambians are criminals, not at all. Yeah, okay. What I am saying is those who were returned, a significant number of them, yes, actually broke the law. Therefore, they were repatriated, yeah, deported. But once again, this is an issue which will need continuous dialogue, even if the two sides may have different views and concerns. Let me also underline, when we negotiated this migration management, including return operations, a few months later, last year I'm talking about, the Gambian government announced a moratorium, which the European Union accepted and respected. We restarted a few operations early this year, and then because of the COVID circumstances, we also suspended all such operations. What I want to explain by this is that the fact that the European Union is very much listening and understanding the challenges in the country. On the other hand, we will also have to do these operations, because if you don't do such operations, that will be an encouragement for many new guys, many new Gambians, to decide on the back way.
On the back way, and you intend to put a stop to that?
Absolutely, because the back way is not in the interest of the Gambia, not in the interest of the individual, and not in the interest of any receiving states. Not to mention the danger associated with it. I believe this negotiation will have to be continued, and I mean, at the end of the day, someone has to build up this country. Gambia needs its labor force to build this country.
But then, Mr. Ambassador, you live in the Gambia and you understand quite well the realities.
I'm learning.
The realities in this country. Politically, it is suicide for any Gambian government to take this route, highway if you like, of accepting, Gambians to be deported wherever they are living in, be it Europe or America. A government in this country simply or clearly doesn't want to do that. Whether they tell you or not, they don't want to take that route because it is suicidal politically. Because at the end of the day, the parents and the brothers and the sisters of those people that they are going to deport, these are things, it's clearly not going to sit well with those family members. And now, when there is election, you are likely to lose as a politician if you should accept the EU sending these people back. And that is nightmarish for the Barrow administration, because we have seen the few deportation, pockets of deportation that have happened. We have seen the amount of rage and anger that has come out of it. So now, I mean, don't you think here there is a need for a rethink on the part of the European Union to say, hey, look, let us find a way of coming up with programs or projects in future to make sure that we put a stop to illegal or irregular migration permanently, but also to find a way of those that are already in your countries to find a way of making them stay. Don't you think that is possible? Because clearly the capacity is there. You are talking about the strain it is going to put and the pressure it's going to put on your system, welfare system, and other systems in your country. But clearly the capacity is there, Mr. Ambassador. You don't agree?
Well, I do not only think, but I do believe we acted in that regard. You may recall the TechIFI program, the Youth Empowerment Project. These are all aiming at information sharing, making sure that any potential migrant knows what is the risk associated with the journey, helping capacity building, training the employability of young Gambians, also supporting them to start up here in the Gambia. The TechIFI program is all about that. It is unfortunate that where on one hand the so-called beneficiaries of those many thousands of young Gambians who benefited from training programs, entrepreneurship development, job opportunities in the country by these programs already the past 3 years, they outnumber the few hundred who were deported. So they show themselves that it is possible to make it in the Gambia. And I think this is an important message because it shows that this is not just a one-shot, one-off example. These are Gambian established companies, young entrepreneurs who have been in the business for several months and years now, ever since the program started. They are no longer milking the cow of the YEP project because they got started and they managed to grow. I think it's not necessarily scientifically proven what I'm saying, but rather my very deep inner feeling. One of among the many kind of bad consequences of the autocratic regime, of the dictatorship, is that people were forced to look down. People were not encouraged. There was no conducive environment to encouraging you to try your business and grow and make profit and employ others. Because basically, if you were successful in your business might have been taken over by Jammeh. That's what the story goes. Whereas now, in a new democracy, trusting yourself that you can make it by obtaining the skills and capabilities, applying for financing or whatever other support you may use, and do your business, grow yourself. This attitude, this mindset, certainly takes time to be developed on a wider scale. If you look at many successful Gambian businesses now, not to mention, let's start here, this TV. I mean, these are examples of capable Gambians finding their way of doing things, achieving business, achieving goals within the Gambia without illegal migration. So these are possibilities, and I don't think Fatu Network ever applied for EU sponsorship, so there was no EU support for what they achieved here. But there are many of them. What actually is a capacity now we are also using when it comes to rendering support to the fight against COVID.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, I'm not sure you've answered my question, but because
Please
don't you think that is only relevant, what you are saying, the TechIFI program, the fact that, or the mindset that Gambians really can make it here in Gambia, don't you think that is relevant to only those that live here? Those youth, you have a teeming youthful population who live here, who have never, decided or made up their mind to take the back way, who live here. Don't you think these programs should be designed to make sure that the mindset there is inculcated in the minds of those people? But those that have already gone to your countries,
yes,
that is what I was talking about. To have a rethink as a way of making them stay, not sending them back home, because they have gone already. And now there is this country where it is extremely difficult for these people to find their feet, to get a job, to take care of themselves and their families. They have gone already. And now you have a government that is also trying to not really rock the boat by allowing these people to come, because if you bring them home, it is going to be suicide politically. Don't you think, and there is capacity on the part of your union, your countries have the capacity to find a way of making these people stay? That is the question.
Well, I am happy to hear that you are so successfully promoting this idea. But yet again, we cannot just go by the fact that their legal status is not fixed in the country. I mean, as much as it is a suicide, as you formulated, I do not think it's a suicide, but you said it's a suicide here politically to support this migration
this
issue.
Idea of
this
bringing
idea,
them back.
this international obligation for any country to receive back their citizens. Let's say that. This is equally politically heated, if you wish, suicide danger.
In your country?
In Europe.
Yes.
I mean, those governments there, they are also confronted with their voters saying that we have illegal immigrants, not only Gambians, from all over the world.
And we don't want them.
They pose a threat to safety and security. They pose certainly a threat to the national welfare system, because they receive support, they receive different financial incentives. So equally, on the other side of the ocean, if you wish, the issue is politically overheated. If you look at the tendencies in some member state elections and the political affiliation which came to power because of partly the unhappiness of the population, if you wish, about managing the migration, this is also a great demand on those governments and political parties to make sure that only those with a legal status stay in the country.
Stay in the country. And now, enough of that, but I'll ask you one more question before
Please.
we move on.
That's why I'm here.
Is there any fresh negotiation really that your union is thinking about in terms of negotiating with the Gambia government to really finally accept to bring these people home?
Currently none, not since the start of these COVID circumstances, for various different reasons. There were, if you wish to come other more important issues to tackle. And also because currently there is no operation ongoing, so we just not yet sit down to continue these discussions. Time will come for that, because COVID will stay with us for a while, unfortunately, but perhaps life will go back to a little bit more normal.
Yes.
In the foreseeable future. But these are again nothing like decided once for all and forever. These are ongoing political dialogues, policy dialogues between European Union and various other countries around the globe. I do believe this, as long as it is indeed a meaningful dialogue on both sides, it will bring acceptable solutions for both sides. The whole European Union is all about negotiating and somehow synthesizing member state interests to achieve the global good. 27 member states in one union, you can imagine the Sunday lunch table and discussions difficult. And these are discussions also difficult vis-a-vis, European Union and different partner countries. Nevertheless, we will still have to continue that, because the problem will not solve itself. We will have to actively contribute to solving this problem.
Your union, the European Union, cooperates with partners, the Gambia, in various sectors, from the economy to trade to energy, if you like, to even the fisheries sector. Let's talk about the partnership between your union and the Gambia vis-a-vis the fisheries sector. There was this grand project or program signed between the Gambia government and your union. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the European Union started negotiating a sustainable fisheries framework with many countries with which the Union wanted to have business relations. The role of the European Union is to establish this legal framework, which is called the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership Agreement. And then comes different European member states, companies to apply for the license, pay for it, etc., and do the fishing. What we wanted to ensure is, like in its title, to have this in a sustainable manner. Now, Gambia joined this fisheries agreement among the very few last ones in the region. So, without starting a big debate, I wonder if the sustainable fisheries agreements have been positive enough or acceptable by more than a dozen of the West African countries. Why would it not be acceptable for the Gambia or beneficial for the Gambia? I think because one part of it is a business deal. Europe, under this agreement, European companies can apply for the license. When they have the license, they have a certain area where they can do certain fishing in certain times of the year. What I believe is the most important aspect, as I am keenly concerned about the sustainability of the world, the planet as a whole.
Because that is really the part that is proving to be problematic.
That's a component in which we made very sure that where the Gambian artisanal fishing is happening, this zone of 12 nautical miles from the coast of the Gambia, there is no EU ship allowed to do fishing. And if you look at reports by the media and incidents, you could see that there are a lot of ships under non-European flag doing fishing and being caught because they are violating this zone. I think preserving this zone for artisanal fisheries serves the purpose of safeguarding the zone for the different species of fish in the ocean, in the Gambian waters. More than that, there is a component in the agreement whereby the European Union provides financial support for the Gambia to do its program regarding preserving the artisanal fisheries. This is a support the Gambia never received before. So beyond the licensing and paying for the fish they fish by the different companies, there is a specific support for the Gambia to go further, reform, preserve, protect its artisanal fisheries capacities. Now, excuse me, this is a bit hot. Once the Gambia, by developing as a country, as an economy, by the time the Gambia will have a heavier fishing industry with big vessels and trawlers and all the equipments, the Gambia will certainly have at any moment, even now, to terminate the agreement. So it's not enforced upon the Gambia. It's among the articles in the agreement. What are the conditions for terminating the agreement if any party wishes to do so?
Wishes to back out of, because really this agreement is something that a lot of Gambians frown upon. The few million euros that you are giving the Gambia to develop its artisanal fishing subsector there. People are saying, well, it doesn't make any sense for the EU to give the Gambia just a few million euros and then allow their shipping companies to come to the Gambia and then embark upon large-scale fishing. You are talking about these 12 miles, nautical miles, where your ships are not, or your trawlers, fishing vessels are not allowed to fish. But the areas that you are allowed to fish, you have this country that is so incapacitated, a country that doesn't have the power really to really make sure, monitor and survey, make sure there is that surveillance, proper surveillance system in place so that whatever fishing that the EU is doing in our waters, deep into our waters, is done in a way that is sustainable, that does not really threaten the country's fish stock there.
Very important what you brought up, this surveillance capacity. If your viewers take the effort to read the agreement, they will see what is the component the European Union is delivering to the Gambia as support to build up the Gambian surveillance capacity. That is to make sure that Gambians are in control of surveilling the entire Gambian waters to detect any illegal fishing, which is, as we speak, happening, and also to make sure...
By who? The EU?
No.
EU companies?
No.
Illegal fishing?
No.
So your companies are not doing that? Your vessels are not engaged in any illegal...
Ever since the agreement was concluded and we started negotiation for agreement, I was not informed by the Ministry of Fisheries of any illegal company, any illegal fishing by European companies. What I read in the papers are those illegal fishing by another big country, pretty much towards the east.
Yes.
So, what I would like to express very clearly is that there is a business deal in it, licensing and paying for the fish they fish out in the waters. There's a component for preserving the artisanal fisheries capacity and building the surveillance capacity of the country. Show me another country in the world, whether east or west, which provides such a fair deal to the country.
So this clearly is a fair deal, Mr. Ambassador.
That's how I perceive it, and that's what I received as feedback from the relevant authorities.
Mr. Ambassador, another area that your union is working closely with the Gambia is the area of human rights. We are in this new Gambia, if you like, and the issue of human rights is something that is really close to the hearts and minds of a lot of people. Your union, with this partnership, also places a lot of emphasis on the issue of human rights and the good governance and the rule of law. So far, what is the EU's assessment of the human rights situation in the Gambia?
I do remember, if I may start with a small anecdote, back in 2017 when we first sit down with the government about how to go about this partnership and what are the area sectors we engage in. And I heard the then Vice President, Foreign Minister, representative of government, saying that they wish to convert the Gambia into the human rights capital of Africa. And frankly speaking, this objective is, I think, something achievable. It is a great objective. It is symbolically giving hope to many people, not only in Africa but elsewhere in the world, where they are not living in freedom, in a free country. If Gambia achieves that, and I think if you look at the past 3 years, the democratization process from an overall human rights perspective, this is amazing, a success story. I know there are lots of criticisms about this and that and different internal political events, which of course I'm not here to comment on. But if you look at what the country was before the changes and where the country is now, the colorfulness of the media, for example, so media freedom, freedom of speech. Look at what was the different series, sometimes with incident, unfortunately, regarding expression of views freely. I think these are all testament of a very successful process so far. For us, from a European perspective, this is extremely important that this robust start of reforming the country, freeing the country from different restrictive measures, heritage of the past, freeing the minds, opening, widening the political space. If this continues, the Gambia is on the right track. And this goal is especially important now because of the pandemic. Under these circumstances caused by the pandemic, there is certainly a risk that money is spent somewhere else or other priorities come up, obviously and understandably. However, yet we have to make sure that these reform programs which the government started, the Gambia started, because it's much more than just the government, this will continue. If I look at there is obviously a big debate about the pace of the changes. And I leave it to the Gambian society to decide whether it is fast enough or too slow. Whatever is their view, they will express that at the next election. From a European perspective, what really matters is that this is taking place. Let me give you one example. Fantastic participatory process of the new constitution, the new draft constitution. The CRC did an amazing job by international standards. So the legal framework was that once the CRC submits a draft to the executive has got 60 days to look at it and then eventually with the proper procedure table it to the National Assembly.
The executive actually has 6 months to look at it, if you like. That's what the law says, up to at least 6 months.
Yes, but that includes all the different procedures by like publishing it in the Gazette, etc., etc. Now, many were criticizing the government that they didn't do that immediately. From a European perspective, as long as it is done within the time frame, we are not going to make any negative comments. And in fact, what happened is that after 2 months of considerations, the government made the necessary steps. So probably by early September, the new draft will be tabled on the National Assembly. I think this is really what matters, in spite of the COVID circumstances. But I tell you one other example, because this process is not going to end at the National Assembly. It will be eventually put on referendum. In spite of the COVID challenges, it is extremely important that the government will continue supporting the process, including providing the necessary budgetary means for the Independent Electoral Commission to organize new voters registration. And this is because the voter registry is pretty old, and many are saying it's not really
Will
reflecting.
the EU be ready to support in that sense, in that regard?
And supporting the process.
Yes.
We have been supporting this process already.
Yes, I know already, yes.
Some component benchmarking the budgetary support was aimed in that regard. Now, I understand the IEC is planning to do the voter registration in the coming period. So we have still a good chance that by the time the referendum could be put in place, the new voter registry will be updated or will be established. I think it serves several purposes. On one hand, making sure that you have sufficient voters registered and can go to the polling stations for the referendum, and of course also for the upcoming new election cycle.
New election cycle. So now, still on the issue of human rights, there, rule of law, good governance in the Gambia. I mean, I know you don't want to comment on the internal political events that are happening, but what we have seen is that back in January, December, January, there was this whole event that has swept the country, the call for President Barrow to resign. This is a president that promised to serve for only 3 years. And you have this group of Gambians, really, who wanted him to resign, to quit as part of the deal. The 3 years, the agreement there. What we have seen is that your union did, issue a statement saying that you are not in for any, violent overthrow of a democratically elected government.
Yes, indeed. The European Union never supported illegal or violent change of governance anywhere in the world. However, it was the same European Union and your favorite European Union ambassador who made a démarche to the authorities, including the Honorable Minister of Interior, Chief of Police, demanding for giving the rights for protest for any political platform in the Gambia, whether they are in the current regime or used to be the former regime, whatever the case, because the principle of freedom of expression is a fundamental principle. It doesn't matter whether me personally like this or that party, they all deserve to have the right, especially in a country where we are in a transition. You may recall that with the new legislation, the Public Order Act will be put in the National Assembly soon. The concept there is totally different from the concept now. The concept now is the heritage of the past. In a dictatorship, you ask for permission even for breathing, right? And this is what happened. Whereas in the new concept, you will have to announce it, that you would organize a demonstration, for example. I think the trajectory is the right one. I was happy to see that back then, the period you mentioned, December, January, there were different political platforms allowed to do protestation, including 3 years Jotna, APRC, UDP, you name it, you have it. And that's what we were very strongly lobbying for. I personally was involved in such diplomatic activity.
You were clearly involved in that, but who told the EU or your union that the 3 years Jotna group was advocating for a forceful or illegal overthrow of the Barrow government? Who told you that?
No, what we made a statement about is to make sure that these demonstrations are done in a peaceful manner, respecting the legal framework. no party, no platform, no political force can obtain a right to go illegal or violent in any of their activities. And that's what we lobbied for. If you recall, I also issued a statement back in early December when some political figures made public comments threatening witnesses of the TRC, especially female witnesses of the TRC. And we issued a statement, saying that we believe this is a country where there is no right for anyone to threaten anybody else. And we also called on the authorities to look at whether these acts actually were in violation of the TRC law. It was only a few weeks ago when I learned that police interviewed those who threatened some of the TRC witnesses. But these are, again, over here we wanted to prevent any possible potential violence. Because we do believe, even if I disagree with your view, you have the same right like me to express your views. Just because you made a testimonial in front of the TRC, which helps the truth and reconciliation process of the country as a whole, you are not supposed to be threatened by anybody because you expressed your views, your experience, your personal story.
But the EU didn't make any statement in that regard. What you are saying clearly is that the fact that people are allowed, should be given the permission, should be allowed to express themselves, whatever thing that they have in their hearts, to pour it out, to protest, if you like, to demonstrate. The 3 years Jotna group, when they came out in that mid-January, for that mid-January protest, clearly that protest fumbled before it could even start. No sooner had they started arriving at the protesting the scene than the police started forcefully dispersing them, a crackdown, really. The EU never said anything about that.
About what? About the
fact that
excessive use of the police force?
Yes. And not even allowing them to protest, to demonstrate. As soon as they started arriving at the protesting, that was when they were asked to just, to all of them to disperse. And the force was really used to make everyone go home. Your union didn't comment on that.
You are referring to the event when they had a permit to demonstrate?
They were issued a permit. They were supposed to gather at a place and then do their demonstration.
And they were supposed to make a static demonstration, and they started moving, right?
They
started marching.
According to some reports, they started marching.
Yeah.
But then, according to other reports, they never even marched, and the police started. But did your union really do anything to find out what really was the problem? The
aerial camera recording I managed to obtain from social media, and what I could see, the crowd started moving towards the highway.
Which highway? Towards which end?
Towards Banjul.
Towards Banjul, really? But you are saying that this is social media that you got this from. Did you verify? Kind of like put in the extra effort really to know what the government is saying and what the protesters are saying, because these are two different things. And your union is here to make sure that to help this country in this whole
it's very difficult to falsify an aerial recording of any event.
So you are saying that the government or the police then is justified?
No, I didn't say that. What I said is that if the crowd had permission for a static demonstration, then that's it, whether I like it or not. If the crowd doesn't respect the permit, then they are in violation of the local laws. Denying a permit can be also challenged in a court. What I always encouraged every party to play by the rules. These are the legal framework the country has got in place, inherited, but this is it. Rule of law means regardless whether some aspects of the current law may not please us, yet we will still have to respect that. But for the permission, we did a diplomatic activity to lobby for giving permission to any political platform which wishes to express their views in a peaceful, law-abiding manner.
I mean, one of the vexed areas really when it comes to human rights anywhere in the world, in the Gambia, has to do with the issue of homosexuality. you as ambassador has been someone who has been quite forthright, as ambassador of your union has been quite forthright in advocating for the rights of people, of the LGBT community to be protected. And you made some comments sometime during the Muslim month of Ramadan. This comment didn't go down well with a lot of people. That the EU ambassador is saying that there is this whole new campaign that your union is planning to come up with to really push the agenda of homosexuality in the Gambia.
You invited me to provide you with detailed information about EU projects, EU campaigns, EU activities. In this regard, I have nothing to say, because we do not have any campaign, any project regarding LGBT issues. You claimed that I did campaign during the holy month of Ramadan.
The comments
I
that
did not.
A lot of people say came from the European Union, the statement.
Just because many people are saying that, it may not be true. What we did, we commemorated the International Day Against Homophobia on the 17th of May by posting 2 short, brief posts on the website of the European Union delegation, and that's it.
What was that about? It is important to clear this air, because out there's a lot of fury and anger directed at your person as ambassador of the EU. A lot of people, maybe they have been misinformed. What they are saying is that the EU ambassador is the one who started this whole thing. He was the one who said that they were going to come up with this fresh campaign to push the issue of homosexuality in the Gambia.
We were not pushing that. We have no project, we have no campaign. I never made any outreach to the government or any Gambian authority in that regard. None. None. The only thing we did, since we are a diplomatic representation, we represent the values of the European Union, and in that sense, we commemorated the day of the 17th of May, which is an International Day Against Homophobia. What we also posted there was the pure fact that last year there was one Gambian who was discriminated on such grounds, for which we had to mobilize a protection mechanism and safeguard him from those threatening his life. We were very loud against any sort of discrimination, because we learned throughout the history in Europe that discrimination never leads anywhere good. And that's it. There was no campaign. The European Union always accepted what the Gambia decided, as the Gambia informed the Human Rights Council last year about having no intention to decriminalize homosexuality. That's it. Have you heard any comment from the European Union or from me on that? That day?
Because myself, I've not seen it anywhere that you directly say those things. But what I see out there is that it is the EU through their. Some are even saying that this man, that is you, should be deported. The government should just arrest him and deport him for bringing this whole homosexuality, because they are saying clearly it is you who triggered it, who started it, and now you were joined by, they say the EU ambassador is joined by the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia when their annual report was submitted to the National Assembly. They also recommended that the Gambia should come up with measures, laws really, to protect the rights of the LGBT community.
There is no campaign and there is no activity in that regard. We don't even have a project in that field, not even in human rights field as such. So the question why the Facebook post was twisted and
you don't really know.
I have my opinion, which is my personal opinion, may not reflect the official opinion of the European Union, but like in social media, there are lots of misinformation going around. It might also serve certain political purposes. But this is not something I should make a statement about, because there is nothing to say about it. There were 132 countries around the globe who commemorated the same day, including Muslim countries. So there is nothing to talk about it. It is a commemoration of a day, as we had a commemoration of 9th of May or other days, international days. That's it.
But now that is clear. That you are saying that your union never made any statement or never pushed for any campaign, and that is no campaign at all. That is very clear.
We are not imposing anything on the Gambia in this regard.
In this regard?
Not.
That is quite clear. But now tell us your opinion, because I have sought the opinion of, because this debate is quite raging. Now you have even our religious leaders who are serving on the National Human Rights Commission are also immersed in this whole debate, this homosexuality, gay debate there. I interviewed the US ambassador just a couple of days ago. I asked his opinion. I want to ask you your opinion, because I think this will help the Gambia a great deal in shaping whatever consensus that is going to come out of this debate vis-a-vis this homosexuality debate. What is your opinion in respect of the LGBT community?
What is my opinion of the LGBT community where?
Anywhere in the world, anywhere, not Gambia, but anywhere in the world that is this community. What do you think society owes these people?
Well, human rights are universal. Whether I am white or you are black or the other is yellow, whether I am a woman, you are a man, or whatever, there should be no discrimination based on such aspects. History shows us that discrimination on gender, on religion, on whatever, always created something bad. So as far as the European Union is concerned, we celebrate our diversity. We are united in diversity. My personal experience, and in that sense, I was certainly surprised to hear and read some of the comments which were expressing very much anger. I was surprised because my experience in the Gambia taught me that the Gambian culture is a culture of peace, tolerance, and respect. In that sense, I believe every single human being deserves respect, no matter how different they might be in a way. This is not promoting for breaching the law. This is tolerating who all we are. And in that sense, I believe this is also a process. I do believe many reactions are a reflection of the individual's awareness about this issue, heated by different hidden agendas. But I think this is something the Gambian society as a whole will discuss if necessary, and if not, it will remain as it is now. What I am against is the discrimination in the sense that if someone's life is threatened, there is something no good. Because I do believe everybody has got the right to live on this planet.
On this planet. And one thing also that is here in the Gambia is this argument that it is the West. Because if you look at the relations between the West and Africa and the Gambia, if you like, it has always been based on shared value. And the argument here is the issue of LGBT is not a shared value at all. It is something that is being imported from the West. It is a value that the Western world subscribe to. They want to import it to Africa or to the Gambia, and really we don't want that. When they don't want some of our own values to be exported to, for example, some of the arguments that I've seen out there is that if you go to your countries, the issue of polygamy is illegal. But you want us, I'm talking about some of the argument out there, that you want us to accept this lifestyle, but you don't want to accept our lifestyle, polygamy. What do you have to say about that?
I don't have to say anything about it because, as I said, we don't have a campaign, we don't lobby for it, we are not imposing anything on the Gambia in this regard. But since you are asking my opinion, I can tell you that if you go to France, if you go to Germany, you will find families living in polygamy. How about that? I wasn't sure whether you were reading from the Jammeh's rhetoric claiming
No, not at all.
claiming,
Not at all.
claiming,
not at all.
claiming that this is a Western
Not at all.
whatever.
I mean, these are arguments that are being pushed by
Listen.
people, Gambians here, not just Jame who would say this. A lot of Gambians who would say this. So I'm just asking you to kind of like put everything into context, really. That argument, what do you make of that issue of, okay, if homosexuality is a Western value, polygamy is a Gambian or African
Western value
Yes.
is non-discrimination. We do believe everybody deserves to live in peace and harmony. We are against discriminating people based on sex, gender, sexual orientation, whatever. And that's our value. We as well, at the same time, accept what the Gambia is. So that's why I said there is no campaign, there is no diplomatic activity in that regard, there is none. So there is no EU project I can inform your viewers about in this regard.
There's no EU project. But what would you tell Gambians as they go about this debate, this very sensitive debate? Because this debate now is turning, it is also taking a religious dimension. Because people are not just linking this to our culture, but they're also linking it to our religion. And it is becoming really, really serious.
You see, who am I to advise? I am not here to campaign whatsoever. So you inviting me to, what do I say to Gambians? I do not say anything, in the sense that if someone is interested in verifying whether homosexuality is a Western thing, then go to science, look at history, and look at facts where such occurred in the history of mankind. If you look at that, then you will see it is not a Western-made thing. But yet again, this is a decision by a community of people called the Gambia. That's it. For a fact, the difference between being religious, which is something you born into or you convert into, you pick it up. Whereas if you belong to the homosexual family, so to say, you are born like that. It's not your choice. If someone takes effort to look at what is the 17th of May, we'll easily find what happened in 1990 on the 17th of May when the United Nations, the World Health Organization, made it very clear, declared that homosexuality is no longer a mental disorder or a disease or whatever. This is something you can't do anything about. Therefore, you are born with it or not. But it's only for those who really wish to see the facts and where it is from. I am not here to convince anybody. This is not my role, because as I said, the European Union in this country is not imposing anything in this regard. If someone interested in looking at the aspect of discrimination, someone can really look at the consequences of illegal actions in the country. If I rob a bank, I get, I don't know, 10 years. But if a homosexual robs a bank, he may end up in prison for a lifetime. You are punishing one type of person, so to say. You are discriminating, not based on the damage caused by the action, but just purely because of his sexual orientation. This is the discrimination we do not share in Europe. But yet again, as I said, I'm not here to convince anybody, because this is the country where...
What do you have to say to those Gambians who have clearly lost faith in you and are campaigning for your deportation?
I'm deporting what? LGBT or what? I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, people that have lost faith in you because they think that it is you and your union that started this whole thing, and now they are campaigning, they are asking the government to deport you back to your country.
Frankly speaking, today is the first time I heard that someone asked for my deportation. I don't have message to them, because I do believe if someone looks at facts and not twisted narratives, can really see what happened. And the European Union as a whole, neither myself, my humble self, we were not involved in any campaign or lobbying in this regard. And I think that is what the government is very aware of.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming to our studios. We really appreciate this.
You are certainly welcome anytime. I wish we had more time for talking about more projects and what the European Union has been delivering in the Gambia, because I thought that was the subject of the invitation.
I think we started with that, and if we were supposed to talk about this project, the EU is in a lot of projects, and if we were to talk about that one by one, we will spend 5 hours here.
I really appreciate that you judge me by my deeds, and you don't judge me by what others are saying.
What others are saying.
I really appreciate that.
Mr. Ambassador, again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you also for wearing your mask. Thank you.
Well, I got instructions that you have a mask policy,
yes,
so of course I respect it, because I'm basically a law-abiding officer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. That's Ambassador Attila Lajos, the EU ambassador to the Gambia, speaking to me there. That's it for today's news review. We'll be back tomorrow. Until thank you. My name is Lamin Jai. The European Union has been forging fresh relations with the Gambia since the overturning of the dictatorship some 3 years ago. EU-Gambia cooperation over the past